don't see it. Um, Being in the community, you know, I don't know how you even film the Netflix series. Being back in that same courtroom where there was a hung jury, and then finally they convicted you. And I watched a juror say they only did that because they didn't convict him the other time, so we had to do something. It wasn't that even they thought that you were guilty. They just knew that they had to do something. How did that feel for you to hear that? That they just had to do something. Not even for certain that they thought that you were guilty, but they had to do something. So that's what they did.
Yeah, I don't recall that part. My memory of that part, was that there was it was one mistrial. It was in between one mistrial and another mistrial, and them having to fight that feeling. But I don't believe that was part of the jury that convicted.
So the jury that convicted you didn't take very long. They came back pretty quickly, correct?
Right.
When they brought you downstairs after a couple of hours, because it didn't take a full day, right? It just took a couple of hours for them to come back.
Yeah, I believe 3 hours.
What did you think was going to happen? Did you know that they were going to come back and say that you were guilty?
Not at all. You say what I think was going to happen. I thought that I was going to be found not guilty. That they was going to come to the conclusion that I didn't have anything to do with the murder, and that I was going to go home. Like I was still naive when it comes to the working of the system. Even though each step of the way it's failing me and it's showing me that it's not going to work. Even at that point, I'm still thinking, well, okay, the system like here is going to work.
Rosemary, you had the weight of the world on your shoulders because you were his last hope, basically. If you didn't come through, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So how much of this affected your day-to-day life as far as this case and knowing that you had to push through and you were it for not just him, but his family and everybody that loved him? Like you fought, I saw you fighting for documents and you were not okay with the fact that they weren't giving things up, and you were starting to uncover things that they were trying to hide for many, many years. Like, how did this all feel for you? You had like the whole world was on your shoulder. His life was in your hands at that point.
Yes, it is, and it's like that in almost every murder case that you take on. You literally have to be the shield between the Commonwealth, the Boston Police Department, and your client. And if they're going to get to your client, they have to go through you. That's the role, I think, of a good criminal defense attorney. And so when we're searching for these documents, when we're experiencing all this frustration, Sean and I knew, and Jaleese McDonough, who was from my office, who did a fabulous job, when we're searching for these documents and they're trickling in, and we know there's more out there, and we keep pushing and pushing and pushing, we all knew that by the time we got in front of Judge Ball and we were able to get the evidentiary hearing, that it wasn't going to get any better than that. That's as good as it was going to get for Sean's case. And we thought that we accomplished our goal of being able to expose the corruption, the goal of being able to prove that the trial attorneys didn't have this information, and our goal of connecting Mulligan to the corruption. We were pretty confident that we had done that. But it's a cop killing. And any time it's a cop killing, you can't be confident about what a judge or the SJC is ultimately going to do, because sometimes the rules change for people who are convicted of cop killing. And it was just so, when you talked about race earlier, it was just so much easier for the community to believe that a black kid killed a white cop.
Right.
And it was such an easy sell for them that a black kid killed a white cop that they didn't want to look anywhere else. The evidence led in all of these other directions that didn't have Sean anywhere near it. But most of those people were not black, were not poor, and we're not easy to manipulate. And that's what we had here. And so in terms of do you know you have the weight of the world on your shoulders? Always. you walk into it understanding that this is it. And when we finally got the decision from Judge Ball that she was going to grant a new trial, Jaleesa and I were actually on trial in another homicide case, and so we needed to get up to the jail as quickly as we could to be able to tell Sean. My biggest fear is that he would find out through somebody else, not through us. And so we raced up to the jail after court, and we're sitting in the attorney room waiting for him to come. And when you visit in state prison, they announce you have an attorney visit over the PA.
Yes.
Attorney visit for Sean Ellis, attorney visit. So everybody knows I'm there at that point. And so we're waiting and waiting and waiting. And Sean was always a client who never kept me waiting, ever. Like
right.
if they said attorney visit, he was there within 5 minutes.
Right.
He might have been in his gym clothes. He might have been walking the yard. He might have been in the law library. Whatever he was, he came because he had a tremendous amount of respect for myself and for Jaleesa, and for the work we were doing in our time. And this night, it seemed like forever. We're waiting and waiting and waiting, and we're looking at the clock on the wall thinking, oh my God, he's not going to get out here before visits get over, and we're not going to be able to tell him. Like, how can this be? And so he finally does come, and when he walked in that room, he had the look of panic on his face, because he knew, and we had a conversation about this later, but he knew this was his last chance. He knew that if Judge Ball said no, in all likelihood, he was going to spend the rest of his life in jail. And
right.
so I think that he walked as slow as he did because he didn't want to give up hope. And until he saw us, he still had that hope that maybe someday he would go home. And when we finally said we did it, we did it, there was just such a tremendous amount of relief in him to understand that he's going to get a chance. You're going to get a second chance here. And not many people get second chances like this. And just overwhelmed. The three of us literally sat in that attorney room until they kicked us out, which wasn't long enough in my mind. But they don't care. They were corrections officers. They have their rules. But we sat in there just sort of basking in the idea that we had accomplished this, and now we knew the Commonwealth was going to appeal. We knew we had to fight it in the SJC, and we had to gear up for that as well. But
right.
we cracked that first barrier. And it was such an important barrier for us to crack. And we felt good and we felt confident about that. And I said to Sean, do you want to call your mother or do you want me to? And he said, they're going to shut off my phone, so you have to call her. So I remember getting out of the jail, hopping in my car and calling his mother and calling his sister and saying, here's the situation. And they were just so relieved. And he was able to catch up with them the next morning and tell them, and then things moved very quickly from there. But hope is a hard thing to maintain when you're in custody. And it's a hard thing to maintain when the system has failed you in the way that the system failed Sean.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that frustrates me the most is that when you say, did the system fail because you're black? Did the system fail because, they were corrupt cops? The irony of the whole thing is that nobody is looking at why the system failed. Right. Nobody is looking into that. Not the district attorney's office, not the police department. And so, I always analogize it to a plane crash. When a plane crashes, everybody goes to the spot that the plane crashes. We find the black box. We figure out what happened. We have all these people working on it. And that's so that people feel comfortable getting on that next plane.
Absolutely.
We don't want to take that level of comfort away from them. Why don't we do that with the criminal justice system? Why don't we have these, when we know there's epic failures that happened, why aren't we looking into how and why it happened? Because unless we do that, we cannot assure, A, that it hasn't happened to other people, which we know it has.
Right.
How do we prevent it from happening until we understand how? We know race played a huge role in this. We know that corruption played a huge role in this. But how wide and how deep, we don't know because they won't look. They want to just pull the covers up and say, he did it, we can't prove it, let's move on.
Right. And as I said earlier, like, it happens. And it happened to Keon Sprinkles. It happened to Darryl Jones. It happened to Victor Rosario. It happened to Nat. Like, it happened to Ronnie Qualls. It's happening to Ricky McGee now. It's happening to Stephen Pena now. It's a problem with how that system is working, and it isn't going to stop working in that way until someone looks into to why these things are happening.
And there's not enough attorney scapitrios out there
Oh,
to make
fact.
sure that this doesn't happen. So, Sean, you've done something that I commend you for, because again, I've been following you. Like, you know, I wouldn't say a fan, I'm one of your biggest supporters. And silently, um, anybody that wants to hear, I ask anybody that I interviewed as an attorney what they think about your case, because I want to know if they believe that what happened to you was an injustice or that something just got overlooked. Because if it was something that just got overlooked, that's a big deal. That's not a small thing. But now you work for the Innocence Project. You do a lot of work with them. And you help people that were like you. And you go out to the community and you speak. And I see you on a lot of Zoom platforms. And I see you speaking out about the injustice in the system and how you don't want anybody to be you. So what made you decide to go into that line of work, seeing as though you spent 21 years of your life behind the wall? Did you see anybody else that looked like you, that was in the same predicament as you, that is still behind the wall today, and that you felt that you had to come out and not just fight for you, but fight for them too?
Yeah. And so I just named them, and I'll name them again. Ricky McGee is somebody who had at this point been in prison for between 22 and 23 years.
Wow.
For a murder that I believe he did not commit. And one of the things about his case is there's a detective by the name of Daniel Keeler, who again, everybody knows has a history. But he's been allowed to sit on cases and taint cases and intimidate witnesses, right? Which is what happened in Fuquan's case for Familia. You know what I mean? And everyone's just overlooking it.
Right.
And just acting as though it just didn't happen. There needs to be a mass looking of looking into all the cases that everybody knows who the dirty cops were. Everybody knows who the cops were that was planting evidence and setting people up. Everyone knows who it was. And if you don't, then you're not asking the right people. But you know, we need to look at those cases and find out, you know, what's going on. Steve Pina, another one. He just had a hearing, I think it was last week or the week before last, presenting DNA evidence that showed he didn't have nothing to do with nothing. It's like, come on.
So I've seen you in the community helping people like yourself, but I also have seen you working in the community, like when you did the toy drive with my uncle. He's a Boston police officer, and I'm sorry, I don't care if he's my uncle or not. I would not do any toy drive with him because again, these are the people, and I had to remember. That's just like saying all black people are the same, because I don't believe every cop is bad. But coming from where you came from, I've seen you do community work with Boston police officers before. And you don't appear to be standoffish. You're engaged. How are you able to do that? Because you already know my take on it. I would not be able to do that. I'm sorry. Everybody's guilty, just like they said you were guilty until proven innocent. They're all guilty too, and as far as I'm concerned, they all knew about it. That's how I feel. And no one's excluded from that when you're talking about 21 years of somebody's life. So how are you able to still do this, to still be in the community and speak to people like other Boston police officers and other people in authority and not feel any type of way at all? Or it appears that you don't.
Yeah, so this is what I'll say to that. You know, it's I don't take the position that all cops are bad. Like, being a police officer is a job. Just like being a doctor is a job.
Right.
Right? Just like being a defense attorney is a job. So you go about doing your job and you're fair about it. Right? Then there's no problem. But when you go outside of the parameters of your job, just like when people go outside of the parameters of the law, that's when there's a problem. When you go outside of the parameters of what it is to be an officer, that's what the problem is. So
Right.
when I encounter somebody such as your uncle, who I don't know to have gone outside or have a history of going outside of the parameters of his job, and then he approaches me as a human being, as an individual, then it's only right for me to approach him back in that way.
Right.
And so this isn't a crusade, Sean Ellis and Rosemary, uh, against all police officers. Like, the problem here is there was a setup, there was a cover up, and there was corruption that permeated throughout this whole case, this whole investigation, and that's a problem, and that's what we're saying needs to be dealt with.
And I couldn't
So
agree with you more.
and so I don't take the position that all cops are bad.
Well, just so you know, my uncle, before he retired, was a cop for over 30 years, and he said he never put out a service weapon ever. So I know that there's cops out there that don't necessarily have to take that road. I know that it's possible that you don't have to shoot to kill every person that you encounter. You don't have to lock up every person that you encounter. Um, you're a community activist. You're a role model. You do a lot in the community. And I think that that's to be admired about you, Sean Ellis. There's a lot of people that look up to you and that stand with you. What's your next thing to do in the community? Because to me, it seems like you've done it all. You're speaking. You're always speaking out, sharing your story. Do I see a book coming or anything? Do I see any of that stuff coming down the line for you?
Yes, most definitely. You know, a book and who knows what else. But is I just I want to circle back and say this a little bit in fervence. It's like one of the problems is that when is that we as black and one of the problems is when we as black and brown people do not show up to work, right? Being our true and authentic self. When we feel as though we have to kind of like fit in to the system because
Right.
now we're perpetuating, what the mechanics of the system. We're perpetuating that, and it's only gonna stop when we show up, no matter in what field it is, whether it's as a doctor, whether it's as a policeman, whether it's as a nurse, whether it's as a lawyer, whether it's at whatever it is. It's like we help to stop the perpetuation of systemic and structural racism by showing up as our true and authentic self. And so that's in part because that's part of who I am. That's part of the work that I do in the community, and just showing the younger people that they are loved and that they are cared for, so that they can grow and develop and be proud of who they are and stuff. So
There's hashtags, there's slogans, there's many people that speak out in your name. Does that overwhelm you at all? You're like a trend, like you're trending. Your hashtags are unbelievable, um, and I don't know if you're aware of it, but does that overwhelm you? The amount of support and the love that people show you daily?
what I'll say to that is that my kick-ass attorney on his car right now does a wonderful job of shielding me from everything I need to be shielded from.
She's a superstar. I don't think she knows that. I don't know if she knows. She seems very humble, but Attorney Scapicio, I have to commend you and applaud you, and I'm sure Sean and his family have said thank you, but not just for him, but for the way that you do your job. You're not just saying, okay, well, my client is innocent. You're saying, well, I'm going to prove to you, because just like you said that he was guilty, I'm going to prove to you that he's not guilty, and you don't stop. it's like you're relentless with this. You don't stop until you uncover whatever it is that needs to be uncovered. And I think that that's to be applauded. I see a lot of attorneys. I've done a lot of time. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of attorneys that don't really care about their clients. It's like they're so bogged down in the system that they don't take the time to see that maybe their clients need something other than jail. And I think for you, you fight so hard. You're fighting for freedom. You're going for the gusto. There's no, I want my client to go for 2.5 years. No, I don't want him going at all. I thank you for the way that you fight for your clients and the way that you fight for injustice, whether it's the Boston police, whether it's the DA, whether it's the judge, whoever it is, and you always want to get to the bottom of it, no matter what. I would be afraid to be on the other end. I'm going to school to be an attorney now, and when I interviewed Rachel Rowland, she said maybe I could be a DA, and if I had to come up against you, I'd probably quit. Because, and I'm being honest, because at this point, I've seen you be relentless, and with good reason. So I thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And we have to be relentless because there's no other choice. If we don't find the evidence, if we don't uncover the truth, then our clients die in jail. And that's not an option that I'm willing to entertain. If I take on a case, then I'm going to do everything in my power to find the evidence to prove their innocence, because I feel like it's my responsibility, it's my job, it's what they've hired me to do, and I'm not going to stop until I find it. And when I believe in my clients, and I do, and I believe in their innocence, there has to be evidence out there somewhere that says something different than what a jury heard in a courtroom someday. And so I'm not going to stop until I find it, because the alternative is to give up, and that's just not in my nature.
Not in mine either. So hopefully you'll have a place for me when it's all said and done when I get out of school. You're going to teach me everything you know, because you know a lot. And Sean, I thank you. I have a sweatshirt made for you that I want to send to you. I told you this before. I just appreciate you, and I appreciate the work that you're doing in the community, and I appreciate the fact that you haven't given up. I know that you've heard many stories where there's been people who have gone to jail and they haven't committed crimes. They come out and their life is really hard and they don't know how to get back to normal society. And one guy in New York committed suicide. You know, I think that it's to be applauded, and this is a big deal. And I'm grateful that you're free, and I pray that whatever is going on in your future, that it doesn't hold you down. And there's great things to come for you. Attorney Scapicio, thank you for coming on the show finally. And Sean, thank you for finally getting on the show. Is there anything you want to say to the people that are listening? Is there anything? How do people, because there's probably people listening right now, I can't see the comments, you have to go back and look, you guys can go back and look and respond. But how do people get a hold of you? Like if they have family members that are incarcerated and they feel like they're wrongfully convicted of something, how do they go about getting involved in the Innocence Project, or how does that work for somebody who has a family member that's incarcerated that needs this type of help? Because Rosemarie has her hands full, so we don't know. How can we?
So they can either get in touch with me on my social media platforms, either Ellis K. Sean or Sean K. Ellis, one of those variants on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or YouTube. But they can also email me at Ellis. They can email me at Sean at Sean at NewEnglandInnocence.org.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so it's Sean at NewEnglandInnocence.org.
Perfect. And we thank you for that. Sean, I'm sure I'm going to be seeing more of you in the community. I always see you doing something. You're a pretty busy guy. So I thank you for coming on the show. I thank you for being open and honest with the questions that I asked. Attorney Scapicio, it's very nice to meet you. I thank you for coming on the show. Everybody, you know how to find her. She's hot in the streets. Everybody knows who you are. I just thank you both, and I thank you for never giving up. And Sean, I thank you for never giving up on yourself, because that's to be applauded. And I'm going to stay tuned and see what's next for you. I'll text you to let you know that I'm going to send you a sweatshirt, and you got to wear it. I want to see you wearing it. I want to see you post it and wear it. You have that big afro. It's actually the Trial 4 poster I had put on the sweatshirt this week.
Okay.
So thank you. I appreciate you, and you guys have a good evening. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Not Your Normal Conversation. Stay tuned. Maybe next time I'll have Rosemarie on by herself to answer some legal questions if she has time.
Sure, call me.
Yes, I will.
John will give you my cell.
Okay, thank you. You guys have an awesome evening. I thank you both. Stay blessed. Sean, stay active. We need more people like the both of you in the community.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you. Peace.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Bye-bye.